G'day guys, welcome back to another video. We are doing this. We are going to be reading the Silmarillion by J.R.R Tolkien for the very first time. You see, the Silmarillion has been sitting in the top corner of this bookshelf, the spine uncracked until today. And I've had 3 different people in my comments call me out over the last year and a half for not having read it. Particularly in the videos where I talk about the Lord of the Rings trilogy being one of my all-time favorites. How could you not have read the Silmarillion? Well, this week that changes. In this video, we're going to be doing a reading vlog of the Silmarillion. I know it's long, I know it's messy, I know it's a hard read, and I also can't say Silmarillion 95% of the time. But sit down, grab yourself a cuppa, and let's get stuck in. For those of you that are unfamiliar, the Silmarillion is a foundational collection of mythic stories that details the ancient history, creation, and the first age of Tolkien's Middle-earth. It serves as a deep mythological foundation of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, explaining the origins of the world, the origins of its famous races, heroes, and villains. The Silmarillion wasn't written at once. It was actually Tolkien's entire world-building creation and came before the Lord of the Rings was actually written. Tolkien originally started work on these tales in 1914 and worked on them continuously until 1973. And because Tolkien never fully finished or polished the compilation during his lifetime, it was edited and published by his son Christopher Tolkien in 1977. Welcome to day 1 of reading the Silmarillion. I'm heading down to one of my favorite cafes here in Victoria, and I'm going to see how many pages of the Silmarillion I can read in one coffee hangout. Now, it would also be a pretty good time to mention that I have just over a week to read the Silmarillion, so this is day 1. All right, this morning I read 60 pages in the cafe, and to say I'm a little bit confused is an understatement. I've already lost track of the names, I've lost track of the story a little bit, and I have resorted to finding a podcast to read along with this experience that explains the experience, that teaches me and breaks it all down. I'm starting to realize that this is incredibly complex, and in the complexity, what that entails. It's one of those stories that I feel like there is richness and deepness and so much complexity built in, but it also feels a little bit disjointed and a little bit tricky to follow along. It got hot in the sunshine, but I say all that to say that I am slowly working through it. This is going to be a bit more of an extensive project, I think, and to dive in deep and to really understand and enjoy and experience, I'm going to have to slow down a little bit, but also at the same time understand that I'm not going to take in every single detail or every single name or every single element of this story, and I will be lost more times than not. And although it's complex and although I'm a little bit confused, it was incredibly nice to re-enter a new part of this world again. The Silmarillion reads like a sacred text. I am not the conventional reader of something like this. It feels like one of those stories for the nerds of Lord of the Rings in a way that I don't quite fit into, but I'm curious and I'm interested and I would like to know more about Tolkien and his world. But this isn't necessarily something that I would normally read. It's not necessarily something that I would enjoy. And I'm not sure if it's something that I would recommend to the average reader. Okay, let's be frank. It is not something I would recommend to the average reader. But more on that a little bit later in the video. And as a little side note, as I'm sitting in the park, there have been hummingbirds humming around. I'm not sure if I've captured any of them on camera. And I say all that to say that that's a good omen and a good sign. So yeah, I'll be reading in the park for the next little bit, and hopefully I can start connecting some of those dots. It is day 3 of reading the Silmarillion for the very first time. And what I found with day 2 was that I wasn't able to film as much as I would have liked, and mostly because I needed to almost channel that energy into reading these pages. But day 3, on the other hand, was a little bit of a different story. I am in. I'm invested. I am locked in. I am excited. I'm engaged. It has taken me probably the better part of 100 pages of being a little bit confused and being unsure and not really knowing the direction of this story, this world and this world building. And the more I've kind of plodded along and slowly turned those pages, the more I've got to a place where I'm like, okay, I'm invested in the Silmarillion. So we're invested now. And I'm not going to be the person that gives you a concise breakdown of the Silmarillion, because there are people that are far smarter, far more invested, and far more dialed into this world than I will ever be. But I will give you a little bit of a breakdown of the first 100 pages thus far. The first 100 pages cover the creation of Tolkien's universe, its gods, and the dawn of the elves. And in this first section, you get this image slowly painted to you of the creation of Middle-earth, which leads us directly to the theft of the Silmaril jewels and the elves' exile from this world. And what I found in the first 100 pages is it is dense, and the mythological pacing is jarring, and you almost feel like you're just being jabbed every couple of seconds to turn your attention somewhere else. And I should also point out that we're at the point of the vlog where I can actually print out the Silmarillion without struggling. So bloody oath to that. And I just want to read you my favorite passage from the first 100 pages thus far. This is on page 8. And it is said by the elder that in the water there lives yet the echo of the music, and the Anu more than any other substance else that is in this earth. And many of the children of the Aluvicta hearken still unsated to the voices of the sea, and yet know not for what they listen. Couple hard words in that passage, but nonetheless, it is a beautiful and stunning language in some sections of this book that doesn't resemble anything else that I've read. And all that to say, it's really nice to be in this world and slowly starting to comprehend some of it and feel like I'm immersed in this story with my immersive reading, with my slowed down approach. This is a fun one thus far. G'day, good morning. We are on day 4 and 5 of reading the Silmarillion. We are out camping on one of the Guelph Islands here in Canada, and it kind of feels like we're in Lord of the Rings here. So that's really lovely. It is sunny, it is beautiful, it is finally summertime, and this feels really fitting for this book here. I'm about 150 pages in now, and I am really starting to, I don't think I would say enjoy, but I'm really starting to have my interest and curiosity piqued, and I'm really starting to fall into this book. A couple things to note: every time I start a new chapter, I struggle with that new chapter for the first little bit, and then as the chapter goes along, I fall deeper and deeper in, to the point that when I end that chapter, I'm not ready for that chapter to finish, and I want just that little bit more. The Dark Lord Morgoth is endlessly fascinating, and I'm really enjoying how these other characters and other species are going to war with him, and this like a culmination, and you kind of feel like it's building up to something. I also want to mention that earlier in this video I've mentioned that I'm taking this slower after doing the first couple of days here, and by taking it slower, this is day 4 and 5, but all of those days are the days that I'm reading and consuming this book. There are days in between that I am simply thinking about it, simply taking days off, simply resting and not consuming on an everyday basis. So yeah, I'm probably going to be reading for about a week, but it'll be probably over the span of 2 weeks, just so I can get embedded in the story, just so I can not rush through it and slow down and really try to take in as much as I can. This is a process, and the more time that I spend reading it and the more time I spend thinking about it and wondering about it, the more I feel like I'm getting out of it. One of the reasons I ended up picking up the Silmarillion, and it wasn't just the comments on the YouTube channel by you guys, it was also I read a graphic novel by Jimi Hendrix, I believe it was. I'll put it up on the screen. And it was the relationship between C.S. Lewis and J.R.R Tolkien. And in this graphic novel, they discuss their relationship as two individuals, but they discuss their relationship with war, and they discuss their relationship with time and their creation. But they also discuss their relationship of their two worlds that they've crafted in Narnia and obviously Middle Earth. And I just found it fascinating because this whole graphic novel talks about this creation of Middle Earth and Tolkien's greatest work of 50 years that never kind of came to fruition. And it came to fruition later in this by his son, but he spent his entire life working on this thing. I just realized I had my headphones on. But this world took him decades to create, and in this creation, he ended up creating the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I think as humans and society, we are all trying to do things in months or a year and forgetting that some of these things and some of the greatest things that have ever been created have taken lifetimes. And that was why I decided to read the Silmarillion, and that was why I've decided to be a little bit more curious. And I'm just fascinated about someone's process and how something like this can take decades upon decades and still never be finished. And there's something to be said in the slowing down, there's something to be said in the creation process, and there's something to be said for falling in love with the world that we create because we want to create it. Anyway, we're going to enjoy this morning sunshine. It's one of the prettiest days I've seen in a very long time. It is day 6 of reading the Silmarillion. I've just taken the last 3 days off reading this book. I needed a little bit of a reset. I needed a little bit of a break, and I've rejoined the party here. I'm currently house sitting, and this is a friend's lovely bookcase. Isn't it ridiculous? But all that to say, I am currently on chapter 20 or page 220 something of this version, and this is a journey. I'm also filming on a new camera, so hopefully this turns out and looks pretty good. Not really sure yet, so we'll find out. But I found myself throughout this journey of reading the Silmarillion having moments of really enjoying it and having moments where I'm bored and want to put the book down and having moments in between and outside and around. This is for the curious. It's for the people that are really interested and really involved. I wouldn't recommend it to every reader. I wouldn't even necessarily recommend it to someone that loved and adored the trilogy, because it's a different kind of reading experience. It's a different kind of story. It's a different kind of book. It lives heavily in world building. And as a conventional reader myself, I am not into world building per se. It's the reason that I struggle with fantasy more often than not, that world building for me at times gets really bogged down, and this definitely has some elements of that. But at the same time, I'm really trying to embrace that and trying to dig deeper and enjoy the complexity and the levels and the layers of the Silmarillion. I'm trying to capture the essence that J.R.R Tolkien put into his world building, and really trying to enjoy while also marvel at how fascinatingly beautiful spending an entire life on a piece of work really is. I'm having a nice time, and I'm enjoying talking through my thoughts and sharing them with you guys, because I feel like this is an experience that you can't entirely experience alone. And I recently read a quote by Anne Patchett, who happened to come into my bookstore the other day, and I got to meet her. She's lovely, by the way. But the quote reads, "No matter how much we love a book, the experience of reading it isn't complete until we can give it to someone who will love it as much as we do." And I feel like that goes for talking about books and sharing books. And I think that is the ethos of this entire channel. It's sharing great art. It's talking about writing. It's talking about books and why we love them and why we care and why they resonate with us. I am going to read a couple more chapters this evening as I look after my friend's cats, who are way too scared to be in this video. Yeah, I'm looking at you, buddy. And you better believe we're heading for Mordor. I just had a pretty lengthy chat over a coffee with a friend about the Silmarillion, and it's the most sense that this collection or this world building story has made sense for me thus far. Because I think the thing about this story is the lack of context you get from the start. You get thrown into this world without a narrator per se, and it got me thinking about the J.R.R Tolkiens book. And in the J.R.R Tolkiens book, Empire of Vampire, the vampire is at the end of this story in this room, and it's almost like this story has like flashbacks, and he is the narrator of this story, and it stops in snippets to venture back to the now before going back into the past. And the problem I found with the Silmarillion is that it doesn't have that narration. So it's this collection of stories and this mythical world building without any context, which I think is the part that I've found confusing, at least. And as I was thinking about the best way to explain the Silmarillion, my mind went to Gondwana, which is also the supercontinent that made up Asia, Australia, New Zealand, South America, and over millions and millions of years, this landmass split into what is now known as all of these different countries and make up, I believe, 2/3 of Earth's landmass. And that is almost the making of Middle Earth. And Middle Earth, the map from Middle Earth to the Lord of the Rings, is just this vastly different map. And you've got thousands and thousands and thousands of years of the Earth changing and this world changing. And at the very beginning, you have the creation of the Earth and the land and the world. And then come in the trees, and then the trees are killed off. And then you've got the elves, and the elves disappear. And then you've obviously got Sauron and all of these other elements that come into play as this story unfolds. But I think it helps with the context of knowing that this story is a story that is undertaken over thousands and thousands of years. And by the time you get to the end of this story, where Bilbo has the ring and everything else, thousands of years have elapsed since the very beginning of the Silmarillion. Which I think is where the problem comes in when you are looking at not having a narrator and not having that context, and why I've had to go and resort to a few videos and a few podcasts and chat to a few people about it. But this book is polarizing in the sense that everyone I have spoken to about this book is asking the question of, why are you reading this? And I spoke to my mum about it, and she's like, this was the only book in my 20s that I was unable to finish. And people are polarizing. They either say it's one of the greatest things I've ever read or one of the worst things that I've ever read. I will say that reading the Silmarillion has satisfied my curiosity, and I am ready for it to be finished. I truly am, even though I know that the last couple of chapters are the best chapters yet. And weirdly enough, at the same time, knowing that when I finish it, I will somehow miss elements of it too. I'm glad this exists. This is one of the greatest pieces of mythology of all time, and I'm going to finish the last couple of chapters here and give you my final thoughts. Alrighty, Roo, I am on the final chapter of the Silmarillion of the Rings of Power. I'm very much looking forward to it, and I'm very much looking forward to getting to the end of the Silmarillion. Stick around for my very final thoughts. Whew. I just finished the Silmarillion. Holy! I just finished the Silmarillion after what has felt like multiple weeks on this journey. I'm glad I undertook this journey. I'm glad I took the time. I'm glad I followed my curiosity in this undertaking. Reading the Silmarillion has made me a better reader. Reading it has made me a better writer. Reading it has made me a grander storyteller. This was never meant to be a review of the Silmarillion. I am not deep enough in the fantasy lore or the world building or the language to give you a proper understanding of this story or this collection. This instead was a video to represent the journey of reading this story. And I've said it before in this video, but the reason I undertook this journey was to understand Tolkien and to understand what 50 years of work looks like and to understand how a man can put so much time and so much love and care and attention into something that was not published in his lifetime. I enjoyed the part of this experience where I got to share and talk and learn through both watching YouTube videos and listening to podcasts and having discussions with friends. And the other side of that is talking with you guys on the other end of this video. But it is a mythological masterpiece. It is a creation of a world that feels so distant and so far, but also incredibly close. And I think if you have made it to this point of the video, unless you are a flat no, at some point of your life, I would suggest taking the time to maybe dive into this story here. It's not a must read, but I do think that there is value and there is beauty and there is something incredibly unique about reading books that we find difficult, a little bit mind-bending and challenging all at the same time. And the Silmarillion was incredibly difficult to read. My brain's still so lost, and that's okay. I'll settle in with that for a while. And if it's anything like the trilogy, I'll be thinking about it for a long, long time. I think I'm ready to reread The Fellowship of the Ring, particularly after this bad boy. And so with a new experience, a cracked spine, the question still remains, would I read this again at some point in the future? And I think for me, the answer is probably not. I might, but I think I've got what I wanted out of the Silmarillion and this reading experience, and I think that's okay. But please, let me know in the comments if you have read this. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know how you felt about this video. I am glad to be at the end of this vlog, and I have more vlogs coming up in the near future because this was fun to make and I enjoyed being able to talk to you guys and experience this through a brand new lens. So yeah, that's the Silmarillion by J.R.R Tolkien. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking the time. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and I'll see you back here for the next one. Cheers.